right, everybody, this is your main man, Anthony Brogdon, and man, I'm excited. I got a lady on the channel who is an expert. She knows what she's talking about. And how about this? She's in the UK, United Kingdom, in Europe, and she's on Strong Inspirations. Oh, let me take I had my glasses on because I was looking at something. But I don't need my glasses to see and tell you, my friends, how I'm so excited that this lady is on the channel. I don't need my glasses to say this. Hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations, because I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I am personally inviting you to subscribe to the channel. It don't cost nothing. It's free. I am want you to hit the like button on this video. Watch, because I just had a little conversation with her. She says, well, I don't know Black history. I said, watch, we're going to get something out of you. And she said, all right, let's do it. I said, cool, let's do it. She said, I talk about Poland and Irish. I said, oh, man, we're going to really rock now. Watch, I'm going to get her. Hit the notifications bell on the channel when the videos come up, and I'm doing 4 or 5 of them a week. Hit the, I don't hit no more buttons other than tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. And somehow I have gone global in doing these interviews, and I have people like this lady coming on the channel, sharing it, who are knowledgeable around the world on Strong Inspirations. Did you see the video I did with the lady out of Ireland who said that there was some Irish that were enslaved in Ireland? Oh my God. Yep. And then they came to America and they enslaved some people? Watch that video. Did you see the one where the lady says that what happened was there was the war of 1812, Revolutionary War is what it was, I'm sorry, and here in America. And they said, hey, if you get your freedom, you help us fight against America, is really what they were doing, then we'll give you your freedom. They lost the war, but then they had them go up to Nova Scotia. And so there's a big community in Nova Scotia, Canada, of Black people. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of South Africa? And he says, I'm what they call colored. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. And I lived through apartheid, which was the same thing as Jim Crow in America. Watch that video. I got one coming up. The lady talks about how the slave trade happened all over the world, slavery in Africa. Watch those videos. Oh, I'm jamming. Watch my movie, everybody. It's called Business in the Black, and you can see it in the UK. It's streaming on UK Amazon. All right, watch my movie. Matter of fact, I worked with some people and we had a showing over in the United Kingdom of my movie. Little old me, I ain't little no more, my friends. This thing is gone big with the lady I got on my channel. Oh my God, watch out. So watch my movie on Amazon. Here, I read my book, Black Business Book, over 200 facts. It's unbelievable stuff. And we're going to talk about the disparities of understanding Black history in America and in the UK. That's one of the things she's going to talk about. Watch, it's going to be mind-blowing stuff on Strong Inspiration. So get a copy of my book. It's on my website. Go to businessintheblack.net. Now, also, I'm having my own Black History Festival, and I'm inviting my guests. Come from the UK to America and come to my festival. I'm telling you, it's going to be really nice. Memorial Day weekend, we in an area where it's an underground railroad. We're going to picnic where the slaves escaped to. You're going to hear the voices and you're going to see the footprints. Watch, we're going to show them to you. It's Memorial Day weekend. All that is on my website, businessintheblack.net. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot, and strong is a favorite term of mine. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And watch out, that is my introduction to my guest today. She's a strong lady out of the UK. We're going to talk and rap, and I'm going to do me some dialect. Watch me go into character, everybody. Thank you for coming on the channel. Introduce yourself. Let's get it on.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I'm Dr. Vanda Popolska, and I'm Chief Executive of the Society of Genealogists. So I've recently come into this role about 6 months ago, and I'm really delighted that I can start digging into my family history. Although, this has caused me some problems because I'm a historian, but I'm a historian of Poland because my grandfather was Polish and he fought in the war, came over to the UK, as many, many brave Poles did, fought in the Polish Air Force, was shot down a few times and, won very many medals. And because, like for so many of us in mixed families, my father left when I was 2, I was really, really interested, and my father was from Barbados, I was really, really interested in the Polish side because that was a side that I had left, really. Okay. So it was my mum and her family history, and being in the north of England in the 1970s, which was really, really white. I mean, you could count the number of non-white people on one hand. So I grew up with a love of history, but really a love of English history, of cathedrals, of kings and queens and castles and Eleanor of Aquitaine and Edward I.
Okay, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there.
All of these people.
I mean, no disrespect in stopping you, but let me handle this a little bit in this regard. What, you were born where?
In Chester.
And Chester is a city?
It's a city in the northwest of England. It's on the Welsh border, but very close in between Manchester and Liverpool.
Okay, and that's all. Is that all the UK? Is that all considered in the United Kingdom?
That's in England, yeah, in the United Kingdom.
So we're going for my geography, folk. The UK is what, and compared to England, is it all the same?
So the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom of Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and England. Oh. So we have 4 countries that are united under one crown under Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh, okay. And you're in a city how far from London that you grew up?
200 miles from London.
Okay, so did you hang out in London? Or that's a nice little distance to go every day or something like that. So you went every now and then as a vacation to London?
I had a godmother in London, so sometimes I would go to London, and my mum would take me on history trips. So we would come down to the British Museum and to various different places because she was really, really into history.
Let me go back a little further, and maybe you know these. How did your family get to England from the beginning? Is there some African connection, do you know? And that's how they got there?
So, I mean, my family comes from a Polish side and an English side. And then my father's from Barbados. And in the late 1960s and 1970s, a lot of Caribbean people were asked to come to the UK to work as bus drivers, bus conductors, nurses, all the jobs that the English white people didn't want to do. But of course, there's a history of that immigration to the UK from the Windrush in the 1940s. We, of course, had Caribbean service people fighting in the war. And of course, we have many communities in the UK that have come to the UK from Africa from times before. We know that when the Romans invaded the UK, which is first century, 53 BC or AD, I'm not quite sure on my history of the Romans at the moment, but from that time we can see remains and we can see artifacts that show us that there were Black people in the UK that early. So a lot of people think that Black people came to the UK after the war, but we know that our history in the UK goes back much, much further than that.
Okay, how about this one? Do you consider yourself Black? That's what you are.
Yes.
But are you called Black in Europe, or is there some other term, or colored, or any? You know what I mean?
We don't use colored in the UK now. It's regarded as an offensive word, and I think there's an important distinction here because the use of the term Black politically in the 1960s and in civil rights in the UK was meant to denote anybody who was oppressed by the British Empire. So you could be from India and be called Black, or you could be from other countries or the Caribbean or African and be called Black. And so I use that term as a political term to denote my heritage as coming from, the places and the peoples who were oppressed by the colonization, especially the UK colonization. Now, if you speak to Asian people now, and a younger generation, they won't regard themselves as Black. So as with all of these terms, there's a lot of different, understandings of what that is. Yeah.
Well, when we say Black, that groups everybody who have African heritage.
Well, not just African,
Ancestry
Caribbean, ancestral. Yeah.
Yeah. As a result, you have family in Barbados?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. And so can we assume this? Your family way back in the other days came from Africa and was enslaved and went to Barbados. Mm. And then from Barbados, they went to Europe.
Yeah.
When they got to Europe, why did your people settle in where you did? Was that a community of Blacks in that town?
No, so at the time, the British government had programs where they would go out to the Caribbean and they would recruit people. So they had a big recruitment drive to say, come and work in our hospitals, come and work on our buses. Many more people came to London and set up communities there. Okay. But in places like Chester, there were, I know my father came, his sister came over as well, then his brother came over, and then he and his sister went to Canada, but his brother stayed in the UK and stayed in Chester. So, out of a family of, 6, 7 children, yeah, sure. They've all, as many of us Caribbeans have ended up in different places. So Florida, Canada, the UK. And what was really interesting for me, particularly in thinking about family history, was when I took the Ancestry DNA test a couple of years ago, I got not a shock, but a reaffirmation, because I know that I'm descended from Africans. I know that. And I know that my people were enslaved, my family was enslaved, we're probably descended from slave owners and enslaved people. But
enslaved
I never
where?
Really felt
enslaved where?
In Barbados.
Oh, in Barbados. Okay, I got you.
But I didn't really, I think, recognize just how strong that African identity was.
Oh, really?
Until the DNA test came back and it had, a percentage on Mali, Togo, Benin. It was really strong West African. And at the very bottom, it mentioned Barbados. Oh. And of course, that shows just how strong those bloodlines are. And at that point, I just thought, yeah, and it totally changed my understanding of who I am and really reaffirmed that sense that, I come from Africa, which was always there. I always knew it. But when you see it there on a scientific test, a DNA test, you just absolutely recognize what your history means. And so that set me on a journey of looking at my Black history, of learning far more about Black history. And because I'm now, knee deep in genealogy and family history, it's really shocking, because I know in terms of my white family, because I lived with my mother and my grandmother, I know all of the stories of that side of the family. I know, the things we think are true or not true, where they lived, their names, their photographs, this sort of thing. But when I came to research my dad's side of the family, again, because relationships are not always, good with parents when parents are divorced, then I realized really shockingly that I didn't know my own grandfather's name.
Okay, let me stop you there. So let's go back over this again. And you said it earlier, because I love what you're doing, what you're saying. Thank you for sharing this. Your great grandfather was white.
And my grandfather was white.
Your grandfather was white.
And my mother's white.
Huh?
My mother's white, so yes.
But where's the Black then?
My father's from Barbados, and my mother's English and Polish.
But your father is Black.
Yes, he's from Barbados.
Okay. Is he a darker complected guy?
He is from Barbados, Black on both sides. So yes.
Oh, really? So he ended up marrying and having relations with a white lady.
Yes.
I got you. And how was that?
We probably should have said that at the beginning, shouldn't we? But I thought that was obvious.
Yeah, you did say it, but I mean, I'm getting there. And was that frowned upon or something like that? Do you think?
In the 70s, yeah, my mother was, spat on the street.
Oh,
Her former
really?
English teacher had to go at her. In the 1970s in the UK, yes, this was happening. It's still happening now for whatever people
Right.
think that there is no racism. There's a
Yeah,
lot of racism in our police, in our judicial systems,
sure.
in our, all of the systems, the structural issues are very much still alive in the UK. We may not walk on the street and be called the N-word or things like that, but there's a lot of other things that are still going on, as I'm sure there is in the United States. We've seen that.
Okay, given your background, did that give you some advantages over darker complected people over there?
Well, I think there is always a problem about, about this issue, that we have a sort of racism within racism.
Yeah,
that
right.
sees
Right.
lighter skinned people
Right.
in a different way to darker skinned people. And I think as a woman and as someone who's got a lighter skin, although the lighting probably isn't doing me any favors here either.
Yeah, okay.
Things were undoubtedly a lot easier for me than they are for, a Black African young boy now.
Yeah.
It's not a good situation, and there is always this issue of complexion. We have been graded throughout systems on our complexions, so it's something endemic in society still.
So with that, did you live in a Black neighborhood in Chesterfield, or a white neighborhood, or mixed, or you know what I'm asking?
Well, as I said before, in Chester there were a handful of Black people,
so
there were maybe
no
4 or 5
neighborhood.
people. There's no neighborhoods. There's it doesn't work like that then. Not in the 70s.
So growing up, did you hear Black history of any note?
Well, I did, because my mum taught me. My mum made sure that I knew about Black history and I knew about civil rights. And she'd written her bachelor's degree dissertation, on young Black boys. And we saw what was happening. We saw what was happening in Liverpool with the Toxteth riots. We saw what was happening, with things like police oppression. And I would see that. And what I could see was the lack of Black faces on TV, for example. I loved Sesame Street. I loved Sesame Street when I was a child, because it was the only place I saw someone who was different, Maria, who's Latino, and, a Black face on TV. This was just not happening in the 1970s.
Oh, really? Okay. So one more question on this, and then I got it. Your mom was conscious enough to not try to raise you as a white person, but to help you and to really emphasize your heritage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So then she told you things of Black history in the UK and also in America. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what you have to understand.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my mother is very, very knowledgeable and has a deep, deep interest in Native Americans. And she's had that since she was a young child.
Okay.
And if she'd had the opportunity, that's what she would have studied at university.
Okay.
So she's always grown up with these ideas of, we boycotted South Africa. We never bought goods from South Africa during apartheid. She taught me about apartheid and Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and a whole range of people. And she taught me what had happened. So yeah, she was my history muse.
I love it.
She got me into
how did
history.
She get this information though? There was no internet at the time, so were there books in the libraries? How was she able to teach you these stories? Yeah,
so she knew, because she'd lived through these things. So she was born in 1951 and then saw these things happening in the States and in other places. And obviously, we saw a lot on TV, on the news.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at, right? Okay.
Yeah. And also she read a lot. She's a very keen reader as well.
Okay, I'm getting there in this regard. She saw, so the news in UK reported what was going on in America.
Yeah. Well, we have the BBC, and whatever people think about the BBC, it's always been on a world global basis, and it's always had good reporters reporting.
So you saw
and
the
she read the
injustices, the
newspapers.
civil rights stuff. You saw Martin Luther King, not you personally, but that was reported over there.
Yeah. And she read the newspapers, and we knew about these things, because also there were solidarity groups in the UK. So if you think about apartheid in South Africa, we had a lot of people in the UK fighting for that. We had songs by famous pop stars saying "Free Nelson Mandela." We were very aware of what was going on, because ultimately, if you take a situation like South Africa, the UK had a role in that. We have had a role in many of the colonial issues, because we have been the powers there. So, and it's interesting for me to say we as the UK, because this is the two parts of being from the oppressed, colonized communities, but also being from the oppressor. And that's really a difficult place to be.
What was the UK's slant on their involvement in slave trade and oppression that they had done in Barbados or otherwise? How did they share that story, or did they at all?
Well, I think it's a really, what we're seeing is real progress over the last couple of years. Because it has been, one of the problems with having Black history in the UK has been Black history has been about slavery.
Right.
And that is all that people learn about. They didn't learn about Black scientists, Black professors, Black musicians. That's changing now, and has changed over the past few years. But, it's, and I really like, someone said the other day that, slavery isn't Black history, it's white history. And that is really, really telling, I think. And so, we grew up learning about slavery and about the abolition of slavery as if this was the great thing that the English did. They abolished slavery.
Yes, that they did do that. The importation of slaves into America.
Yeah, but they didn't do it alone, and they didn't, there were various ways in which it happened, and many, many brave people who'd been enslaved that contributed to that as well. But so there's a really, really complicated relationship that the UK has with its past history. And we're seeing, I don't know if you saw when the statue of Colston, the slave trader in Bristol, was pulled to the ground and thrown into the river. And I visited Bristol a couple of months ago, and I was so moved to see that. I was moved to see it at the time, that people said, we're not having a statue in the middle of our city, to somebody who was a slave owner. Now, yes, he did build hospitals, and he built a philanthropic hall and all this sort of thing, but it was based on slavery. And when I went to see that statue that was now exhibited in the museum, I felt really, really proud of those people that had done that. But there are people in the UK who believe that we shouldn't be pulling down statues, that, this is of the time. So if in Victorian or other times we decided we were going to honour these people because they were philanthropists and they were giving money to good causes, we don't really want to think about where they got their money from. So there's a very complex relationship where the UK wants to be proud of what it did and proud that it ruled the world, but we have to look at it from the other perspective. So it's a big movement at the moment of a difference between how we view our history. And history is not just viewed in one way, as you know. There are many different perspectives on history, and we're beginning to bring those perspectives of Black history much further out and profile them much better, so that my child is growing up surrounded by books on Black history, surrounded by books that reflect him and that show him, and really eager to know, our Black history in the UK as well as in other places.
You being who you are you easily able to find other people in your sphere who feel like you, or do some Blacks try to do, and I'm sure nothing is all one way or the other, devoid themselves of American Black history, or do most people look at it as one?
I think that there's a really interesting debate going on about that, because again, going back to Black history, we were always taught about Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, about the Black civil rights movement in the US. And then we started to say, well, hold on, we have our own Black history.
Right.
We need to think about, our people, and, it's always Mary Seacole, which is great. People need to know about these figures, but we need to develop our own ideas of what our Black history is. So we are beginning to do that, and there are far more resources now. Students can learn about that. And actually, I was a judge for a competition to name 100 Great Black Britons. And a book came out of that with the amazing Patrick Vernon, who's a real sort of beacon of for Black history in the UK. And our aim was to have a copy of that in every school.
Oh, I love
and
it.
this is how it's changing, because when people say it's Black History Month, we don't know who to talk about. We can say, look, we have 100 Great Black Britons here.
I love it.
It's a brilliant book. It's a brilliant book.
I bet we're gonna talk about that. How about this? The people who helped tear that statue down to the slave trader, what was that, an organization of Black people? How did that effort maybe happen?
No, what's really interesting about that is, in the wake of the tragic murder of George Floyd, in terms of Black Lives Matters, what we've seen in the UK is a whole load of white people as allies coming forward and saying, actually, we're taking responsibility for some of this.
Okay.
I was at a Black Lives Matters protest in a very posh part of London. And there were maybe 300 people there. And I would say there were about 20 people who were Black there. The rest of them were white people. Okay. And that's really important, because we need allies and we can't do this, just by ourselves. So the people who pulled down the statue were young white people.
But were they under some umbrella of an organization?
No, I don't think so. I don't know what happened in the run up to it, but I think there was a protest, there was outrage that Colston's statue was still there. And I think, what happened was they said, right, this has to go. I mean, there were Black protesters and Black people there as well, but the 4 people who were accused and had to go to court and were then found not guilty, because obviously they pulled the statue down, but it was said that, actually they tried lots of ways to get rid of that statue. They'd gone to the council, they'd said, people had said a whole range of things that we cannot have the statue of this person here anymore. And so they were found not guilty of the crime that they were charged of. The other amazing thing in Bristol that they've done, because this same person, there was a stained glass window in the cathedral. Now, you could say we need to take that stained glass out, but what they did that I found really, really moving was they had a picture done of one of the enslaved people who was on Colston's plantation. And again, this is Barbados. They had a picture of him and his story. And then they also had a picture of his descendants. And there's a whole project about what his descendants think about the whole issue. And so that educates people, because if you just blank out the stained glass, people say, oh, they blanked it out. But if you take these opportunities, and in so many places in the UK now, like the British Library, it was founded by somebody who made his money from slavery. So having that bust of the person there, but having a note saying, yes, he founded the library, but this is how he made his money. And that educates more people. It's an important addition to our history. So the history is really changing. Okay. And this is a great thing to see in my lifetime.
Yes. When we talk about, and if you don't mind doing this, is there a Martin Luther King there in the United Kingdom? Name a few people who people talk about in regards to Black history. From the United Kingdom, who are some of the noted names?
So we would talk about Mary Seacole, who was a nurse, and it's interesting because there was a contemporary Florence Nightingale. She was a contemporary of Florence Nightingale. So there's always that comparison of we talk a lot about Florence Nightingale, we don't talk really much about Mary Seacole.
And I heard their name. What did she do?
So she was Jamaican, and she was a nurse, and she went out to the Crimea, and she set up a hostel for the soldiers. And it didn't have all of the sort of rules and regulations that Florence Nightingale's hospital had. And it was more of a sort of hostelry, really. And she treated soldiers, and she, probably made their last days a lot more pleasant than they might have been. Okay.
Give one more name that most people talk about in the UK.
Well, I think there's a range of events that people might talk about as well. So they might talk about the Bristol Bus Boycott, for example, where that was led by, and I really apologize because I forget the gentleman's name, but that was led by a Black bus driver who basically said, we are being treated far worse than anybody else, because there was a difference in how Black workers were paid, how they were treated, the sorts of rotas they got, the work they got. And he led a bus strike. So the Grundwick Strike, for example, which is where garment workers who were predominantly Asian women, and when we say Asian in the UK, we mean Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi, rather than Chinese, etc.
Sure.
So those women led a strike in a factory. And that was almost unheard of, because, in those days, women just didn't do that. So there's a range of sort of really events, as well as people, Alauda Equiano, and a whole range of people that we could talk about.
Oh, I got you. I love it. Now, earlier you alluded to how when they being the government of the UK, asked Blacks in Barbados to come back and to work in those various jobs, but that led to the Notting Hill riot. Is that correct? In that story? Well,
there have been riots in various cities across the UK at various points. And I think the Notting Hill riots are probably the most famous. But, a lot of we know what lies behind riots. There is racism, but racism shows itself not only in people discriminating, but also in the living conditions that people are forced to live in. Yes. When people came over in the 40s and the 50s, there were signs on the doors saying, no Irish, no dogs, no Blacks. People were forced to sort of live in accommodation that was substandard. There was prejudice in terms of jobs. There was a whole range of issues, and there were fights. There were fights on the streets. And so all of these things and these tensions can lead to a whole range of different outcomes. And from time to time, just as in the US, people will just say, what, we've had enough. And it may be that, inflation has gone up and things are costing more, or people are losing their jobs or losing their accommodation, a whole range of things. But something just says, as a human, we've had enough. We won't be treated like this anymore. And it comes out in many, many different ways.
What was it against the Irish? Well, I mean, the Irish are white people, from what I gather. How did they identify Irish and say that we want to discriminate against them?
Well, I think, it's a little bit like Chicago. I remember visiting Chicago and seeing that, you have different waves of immigration, and they live in one particular part of the city, and then they become established, and then they move out to another part of the city, and then the next wave of immigration comes. And it was, my family has experienced this in many different ways, because my Polish grandfather was discriminated against after the war. So, they would say things like
in the UK.
Yeah, in the UK. Yeah. So, the discrimination, it's not just on the basis of color of skin. And the Irish were seen as, a poverty-stricken nation of people who were coming to the UK and who were taking those jobs. They were taking the jobs of the builders, the railways. If you look at railways across the world, many of them have been built by the Irish. So, it's who is the immigrant population, and who can you kick down on? Who can you make yourself feel better about yourself?
I got you. I love it.
You're going to kick down on someone else. So for a while it was the Irish. Then it became, it's been the Poles, it's been the Blacks, it's refugees. Now people are kicking down on refugees. So it's very, very, very tragic to see that.
Is there to be Black in the UK? Does that mean that they encourage you to go get your doctorate? Does that mean that they encourage you to start a business? Does that mean that they encourage you to go into politics? Or what is the normal plight for most people?
Well, unfortunately, like a lot of rich societies, when you look at inequality, you look at, who's controlling the politics, the power, the education, and it is, the families and the people who have the money. And unfortunately, we see a disproportionate number of Black people and Asian people who are in poor education, poor housing, who were hit by COVID far more than other populations. And so although there are lots of very good schemes and charities that work to try and encourage people to go to university or support them through owning their own business and those sorts of things. We have a much higher proportion of Black people are self-employed, and that's because of racism in the workplace.
Oh, really? Oh, I
But
love
also
it.
because, if you're controlling your own business,
Yes,
you don't have to deal with that racism. You're not
yes,
dependent on other people. So
yes,
there's a whole range of that, but there's also, that economic deprivation, unfortunately, for a lot of people. So there are
yes,
lots of good schemes. There are lots of charities saying, we want to help people. But at the end of the day, I think what we have to remember is it is all about class. And
yes.
so one thing that struck me about America was that I saw a Black middle class.
Right,
You
right. I
don't
was going to ask you
see,
that. Yeah, does
yeah.
that happen in the UK?
Not as much,
Oh, I got you.
because of different migrations. We have quite a strong Asian, and again, Indian,
Yes.
Pakistani, etc., middle class, because of different immigrations. So the Asians that came from Uganda under Idi Amin, that came over to the UK, were very resourceful and the majority of them set up businesses and were well educated
I
and have
got you.
built, a very good community. But depending on our immigration and how we come here, we are in different sort of communities and in different situations. So,
Yes.
I was very
Yeah.
lucky because when I was young, I got a scholarship to what we call a private school, a public school,
Okay.
a fee-paying school. And so, my education was absolutely phenomenally good. And that allowed me to
Yes. I was
then
going
go
to
on and
ask
do a
you, well, how
doctorate.
did you become who you are educationally wise? Well, like when you went to college, were there an association of Black students that are getting their undergrad, masters, PhDs, or were you just in a small minority of students, when you were going through school?
So we don't have historically Black universities or anything like that
Right,
in the UK.
right.
And I only know about that because I and my son are huge fans of Blackish. We watch that every night and we
Okay, I
absolutely
love the
love
show.
it.
Yes,
Absolutely love it.
yes.
And so there isn't that sort of system or anything in the UK. So when I went to university, I was going to university to study Polish. So I was at a university that specialized in Slavonic and East European studies. And funnily enough, there was one other Black girl there and she was American. She was studying
Oh,
Russian, but it was very, very white. I think the universities are more mixed now,
oh,
but then I went
really?
on to do my
Okay.
doctorate at the University of Oxford. And I remember in my, what we call a matriculation ceremony, when we're all in a big hall and we're being sworn in,
Yes.
I looked around and, there were 5 to 10 Black people among
I
thousands.
was going to ask you that. Yes. Okay. All right. So, is there an association of Black professionals that someone like you would be involved in? I mean, who do you network with at your level that is Black?
Well, there are several attempts in the charity sector to set up organizations for charity CEOs. There used to be I think it was about 10 years ago, there was a network of Black professionals. But I think it's growing more now out of a sense that, there are a lot of things coming out of different sectors that are examining racism, that people are taking responsibility for this. And
Okay.
so I think there's a growth in that. But personally, I don't have that sort of
Oh
Black network,
man.
Black professional network that would be
Yeah.
good to have.
I mean, because like here in America, we have the Black MBA Association. This is an association of people who've gotten their master's degrees. We have the Black accountants, the Black lawyers, the Black doctors, Black, you go on in all the different disciplines. And even we, understand we have the NAACP here, we have the
Mm.
Urban League, and so on and so forth. That's not necessarily the case in the UK.
No, I mean, I think in different universities, there are Black and Caribbean student clubs.
Okay, okay, so
There are some there will be a Black Lawyers Association and those sorts of things. And there are
okay,
pockets of these organizations. But you see, there are starting to be now more groups in terms of Black historians. Now, what's interesting is that we still have a lot of white historians doing Black history.
yeah, sure,
We don't
sure,
have a lot of Black historians doing white history,
yeah,
as I
sure,
might be considered to be. So
yeah,
there's
sure.
still an idea that if you're Black and you're doing history, you're doing Black
That's
history.
right.
And that's really quite interesting.
Yeah. Now, let's go into your particular discipline. One of the things you said is you study history. you study genealogy. Are you able to study genealogy? I know you do it from a Polish perspective, but do you and you've done that because of your ancestry. When you do that, is there some spillover into Black history and genealogy of how people, do they come to you and say, hey, I know what you do, and then you do it for Poland, but can you give me a little hint on where I look for my ancestry? And is there people who are now looking for that even more so than, years past?
Well, I see that as a huge part of my job, because
oh, really? Okay.
what I want to do in terms of genealogy and family history is to say to our communities, yes, we have a place in this, because people have an idea that genealogy and family history is all about posh white people tracing their ancestry back to kings. But I can trace my ancestry on a Polish side, I can trace it on an English side, and I can trace it on the Barbados side. And what we know, unfortunately, the way we have to trace our ancestry is through those records and those notebooks of the white people who owned us. When we were property, we were accounted for. And so the documents and the records are there. Sure. It's just not very nice to read that. Sure. But what I want to do in this role is to say to a lot of our communities, and there are amazing Black genealogists out there. And I've found so many people on Twitter. It's been really great seeing that. And
these are people in the UK that you're talking about.
And in the States. I think there's a lot more people in the States. Yeah. And what we need to say is that, for my organization, the Society of Genealogists, has a lot of records from Southeast Asia, from the Caribbean, of those, and from the English Foreign Office and the Colonial Office. And so we have a lot of records that until now, a lot of Black people haven't thought, oh, we can look at these records and we can find ourselves in these records, or we can find the plantations, or we can find some of the records that we need to see. So my mission really is to support our communities to be able to look at their family history and explore their family history the best way that they can.
Oh, and okay, now we really hitting before we close out there. I told you, everybody. So what you're telling me is this. What's the name of your organization?
The Society of Genealogists.
Okay, Society of Genealogists. And you're located where?
We're based in London, but we do a lot of stuff online. Yeah.
So you have an office, a building that people can come to and do their research?
At the moment, we're closed because we're finding new premises, but next year we will have premises. And we run courses, we run online courses, we run our records. A lot of our records are online. So if people join the society, they have access to all of those records. So people do have ancestors in the UK or in other places, or they want to look at those records, then we have access to that. We have a history of Barbados that was written by somebody who, by a white person, who then, obviously, he had a scribe, and we think that lady, was Bajan, and that she was probably doing most of the work, but he was putting his name on it. But we have things like that. So, we have a lot of treasures in our collection.
Oh, okay. Also, we're going to stay on this because I want everybody to come check you all out. Do you all do archives? Is that?
We have an archive. Yep, we have an archive at a library.
Oh, okay. So now what you're saying also is you asking people to donate photos, documents, what have you, to your archives.
Well, we do, but because obviously it does cost money to sort through them, to store them, and to sometimes conserve them, we do ask for a financial donation as well, if people are doing that. But what we would love, and we have a lot of members who are not in the UK, is for people to take a look at our website, www.sog.org.uk. Yeah, and we have online courses. We have little hour chats on various things, and then if you join us, you get access to all of our records, and a lot of that is online. And we have a helpline, so if people get stuck, we can help them.
Okay, just a few more. Now there are a number of historical institutions in America. Have you connected with, like, for example, the Amistad in New Orleans? Are you familiar with that one?
I'm familiar with it, but I am 5 months into my role.
Okay.
So I haven't made all of the connections that I need to yet.
Okay, because I'm a star. I have an interview on the channel with a lady who talks about that. And I'll send you that link. There's the one in, we have the Smithsonian, the Black Museum in Washington, D.C., and we have another one in Chicago. And so throughout America, there are a ton of genealogy associations that meet and talk via Facebook or other. They have groups. The AAHGS, so on and so forth, that I'm sure, and I'll help you if any way possible, connect you with them, that they know people maybe here in America who would be interested in doing that research, so on and so forth. And then there are a number of professors who investigate genealogy, and I'm sure they have to do it through London. Yours would be a good resource for them to find that information.
Absolutely, and that's a key part of my role in the next year, 2 years, to make those connections with academics, with community groups. What I want to do is work with young people as well, because young people are very invested in their identity. And because we have such a group of mixed people now as well, just like me, saying to them, look, we can help you find out where you come from, who you are.
Yes.
It's really something I'm passionate about. And so today I have just agreed to organize a youth conference on the 7th of May for people under 30 who are interested in finding out all about their genealogy and their family history. And we will be in September holding a conference for African diaspora and Caribbean people to look at their family history as well. So I invite you to take part, because we will be doing some of this online and some of this in person.
Man, everybody, are y'all watching who I got on the channel? Hold on. You got to feel good that your life is turned into doing something as great as this. This is a great thing that you're doing.
Thank you. But I go back to my mum. I always go back to my mum.
Yes.
And she instilled this love of history in me. And even though I didn't start out looking at Black history, and I started out with English history and Polish history, that interest in history and interest in the past and where we come from is something that I'm absolutely passionate about. And I think, for too long, family history for me is just the best way of talking to people, the best way of people understanding where they come from, because they've got something in it. It's their family, it's their past, and they're interested. It's not dry dates of battles and kings and queens. It's about us. And, everybody says, if you don't understand your history, you can't go forward. You have to understand your history. And I'm just privileged that I can be a part of that, and I can, work with people to make sure that more of our communities, many more people in our communities, are encouraged to do that. Because for too long, we've just been told our history is slavery.
I love it.
It's so much more than that.
How about this one? And I know you tightrope this however you see fit. Is the government behind you to do the efforts, to expand the efforts? Let's start there. Is that, who do you have corporate sponsors, that type of thing, to help you move this along?
So we are a charity, so we don't receive any money from the government. So our income comes from our members who pay their membership fees. And looking at something like corporate sponsorship is just what I'm coming in to do now. Getting grants from grant foundations. And just, something like running this conference means that we can connect with some of the community organizations. If we're running an education program and we're supporting schools to teach Black history and to teach family history through some of our resources, that is what we would do as a charity. So, we want to do that. But that's a side that we need to develop, because
I got you.
As I said, I took over 5 months ago, so I'm still really new in this post.
One more
so
question then. Before you took over, had you heard of the organization and said, oh man, that's the dream job for me? You follow me?
No, before I did this job, I was running an organization called the Equality Trust, which works on economic and social inequality. So I was working on, these areas in terms of
Yes.
race and gender, etc., and economic inequality. And when this job came up, I had an interesting conversation with my son, because he said, oh, you're just going to work for a bunch of old rich white people who want to find out what their pedigrees are. You are a social justice warrior. What's happened? I can't boast about you anymore. And I said to him, our history is really important, and we need to know our history. And so, by taking this role, part of my role is to make sure that we have access to our history and that we can do this. And he looked at it in a different light. And then he said, yeah, actually, I think it's a good thing. So
well for him to say that was pretty profound, first of all.
Yeah.
That was a deep comment. But when you came back on him the way you did, then he's got to be even more happy.
Well, I think it's because it was a conversation I had with myself before I took the role.
Sure.
Because I felt like I was stepping down from, doing lots of media, lots of work and campaigning, and coming to an organization which a lot of people said to me, we didn't see that coming. We didn't see you going to an organization like that.
Yeah, okay.
Even though they know, I'm passionate about history. And this for me is the perfect role in which, I can do those things, and I can hopefully get some of my genealogy done as well.
I can't let you go. Hold on, I know you got to run. You get this right, you on to something huge.
I hope so. And I hope so for many reasons.
You get this right, you're on to something huge.
Well, maybe we'll be setting up a US arm at some point as well.
Yeah, you set up a US arm. You go to those international conferences on genealogy and come to America and come to the Amistad and tell them and learn some of what they've done to get to where they are. You're on to something huge. Oh my God, yeah. Is there a question that I have not asked you? Because when we first started talking, you said, I don't know how we're going to do it. And we had almost 45 minutes now. So we did something right. Is there a question that said, okay, you giving us the website, anything else per se that comes to mind?
I think really make those connections, talk to your family. And, when you've got family times, when you've got Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter or something like that, talk to your family and find those things out and write them down. Make sure you've got a notebook somewhere where you can write it down and then start to explore. Because the genealogy community is a wonderful community. Twitter has some very awful holes in it and very awful places, but I found that genealogists are really, really welcoming. And, we all want to help each other because we are interested in our families. And then when you look at your family, you start to look at their location and where they were and what was life like for them and how did they manage and where did they come from. And, as I said, my connection to Africa was never really there. It was a distant thing. But, now I know that I am very strongly West African. That's changed my whole life.
I bet. Oh my God. Oh, whoa, we got something special here. Thank you for coming on the channel.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been
you did this greatly. How about this? I think that you are on to something big, and I know that you're going to take it to the next level. And you know what that level is. That's 10,000 members or some sort or more. That's accommodations from the prime minister and all that for doing it. And you're not doing something that you have to fear people mad at you. I would think. In your other job, maybe you did.
Yeah, but I think in heritage there is room for more work on equality.
Yeah, sure.
There is a lot more room for that in the UK, and I think we're seeing a lot more heritage organisations think about their big houses and who owned them and how did they get the money, and we're seeing a change in heritage, and that's why I think it's really important for me as well to be in this sector because you know, I can do a lot of good work in the equality sector, but there's a lot of good people in the equality sector. If we think about heritage and history, there's still a big job to do there. And so I'm really proud that I can at least, you know, take my experience and my knowledge and put the things that I really care about together in one go, and hopefully inspire other people to, you know, to look at history, to think about history, and to think this is our history as well. It's not just their history.
That's right. I love it. Thank you so very much for coming on the channel. Unbelievable. You got me there. I really got no more questions other than anytime you all have events or something, I want to promote it so people here in America can see it and be involved, the broadcasts and things of that sort. Can you give us the website once again?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I've got a phone ringing here, which is terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't hear it.
Okay, that's good. So we are at sog.org.uk.
Okay.
And you can join us for lectures, you can join us for courses, you can join us and look at our records. And we have advice lines and a forum where you can join in and ask other people. And I would say just come and check us out. Yes,
we're going to do that. I'm going to put you in touch with some people here that maybe can help, you know, give you some ideas or something like that. Thank you for very much for coming on the channel. Everybody, I tell you why you need to subscribe. We got people like this coming on. This lady right here could be, I don't know, the genealogy angel. But she's something special. Watch.
Well, I say I could be an angel, but in reality, I spent 15 years studying the devil, so I might have to adjust a little bit.
Yeah, well, this angel part will get you up to heaven. You're on your way.
I'm on that.
Thank you for coming on. I say this with all sincerity, and I really mean this. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. I got it. I got it. It took me a minute, and then I was like, well, hold on, this thing is real. I understand where she's coming from. You want something that can make it big. And your mom, is she still alive?
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
She knows what you're doing. She hears this.
She's very proud.
And when you got your doctorate, how did you celebrate?
Well, it took a bit of time and it wasn't immediate. So I think I just sighed with relief. But we had a ceremony, obviously, in Oxford, and my mum was there and my partner was there. And it was just a lovely day to think, I've done this. And then I turned the doctorate into a book. And we had a wonderful book launch. And so I just felt, this is.
Oh, so you got a book.
I'd always wanted to write a book.
Of the book there that we can see it?
I don't have it with me. No, I don't carry it around.
Okay. What's the name of the book? What's the name of the book?
It's called Witchcraft in Early Modern Poland, 1500 to 1800.
And is that available on your website for people in the UK?
It's available on Amazon, but it's very expensive because it's a library-based book rather than
is it? Okay, but they can still get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put that in the description. Thank you again for coming on the channel. Can you say how they would say in the UK goodbye or see you later or something like that? How was that said?
Well, we would normally say goodbye, but I can give you a sort of more northern way, which would be ta-ra.
Ta-ra. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming on the channel.
Thank you.
I appreciate you a whole lot. All right.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.